Okay, so these drone sightings that have been popping up, you shared some articles about it, and it's giving everyone kind of a Twilight Zone vibe.
Yeah.
There's something unsettling about an unknown presence in the sky, don't you think?
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what's really going on.
Absolutely.
So before we spiral down that rabbit hole, tell us what you think so far down in the comments. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives like this one. What's interesting about all this is how it's bringing back this old conspiracy theory, Project Bluebeam.
Yeah. It's been around for decades, but it's definitely having a resurgence.
Okay, so let's break this down.
Yeah.
What is Project Bluebeam exactly? I'm sure some of our listeners have heard about it, but for those who haven't, can you give us like a quick rundown?
Yeah. So Project Bluebeam is basically this conspiracy theory that claims that global elites are using advanced technology to fate a bunch of events.
Oh, wow.
Like alien invasions, religious manifestations, all to like manipulate the world into submitting to a new world order.
Wow, that sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. Like, who came up with this theory?
So it originated in the 1990s with this Canadian journalist named Serge Monast.
Cool.
And he wrote about this elaborate plan claiming that technology would be used to project these massive holograms into the sky, like making it seem like religious figures were appearing before people's very eyes.
Hold on, holograms, like giant images in the sky. Are we talking like Tupac at Coachella level holograms here?
Sort of, but on a much grander scale. He claimed that these holographic projections would be tailored to different regions and beliefs.
Wow.
To make them more believable to the local populations.
So like if you were in India, you might see a hologram of Vishnu, but in the U.S. you'd see, I don't know, maybe a giant bald eagle or something.
Right.
It's pretty wild. What else did he claim? What else did Monast claim?
He also believed in mind control technology, using things like low-frequency waves to manipulate people's thoughts and emotions.
What?
He even suggested that global catastrophes like earthquakes and floods would either be orchestrated or simulated.
Oh my God.
To further instill fear and chaos.
Okay, this is starting to feel like a really bad disaster movie.
Yeah.
So basically, giant holograms, mind control, fake disasters, all culminating in a one-world government. Sounds a bit far-fetched. No.
Yeah.
What evidence did he present to support all of this?
That's where things get a little fuzzy.
Okay.
Monast never actually provided any concrete proof for his claims.
Oh, really?
It was all based on his interpretations and speculations. And when you look at some of the key elements of his theory through a scientific lens, they kind of start to unravel pretty quickly.
So let's debunk some of this, shall we?
Right.
For starters, the holographic technology, I mean, we have holograms now,
Yeah.
but they're not exactly convincing on a large scale.
Exactly. While holographic technology exists, it's nowhere near advanced enough to pull off the kind of massive realistic projections that Project Bluebeam describes.
Right.
Like, think about it. Projecting a giant three-dimensional image of a deity that would be convincing to millions of people, that requires a level of technological sophistication that we simply don't have.
Yeah, that's true. And what about the mind control aspect? Is there any scientific basis for that?
Not really. While there's been research into how certain frequencies can affect brain activity, the idea that someone could use low-frequency waves to control people's thoughts and actions on a mass scale is pure science fiction.
It's no secret government mind control race. That's a relief.
Yeah.
But it is fascinating how these theories can capture people's imaginations, especially when they play on very real fears and anxieties. Like you mentioned, the fear of the unknown.
Right.
And obviously these unexplained drone sightings are playing right into that.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on how these recent events are fueling the Project Bluebeam narrative?
Well, it's definitely a case of people trying to make sense of something unsettling. The drone sightings are unexplained, they're in the news, and people are looking for answers.
Yeah.
Project Bluebeam offers a ready-made explanation, even if it's far-fetched.
It's like those drone sightings become pieces of a puzzle that seemingly fit into the Project Bluebeam narrative, right? And then you got figures like Donald Trump weighing in, calling for these drones to be shot down if the government doesn't give us answers. It just adds fuel to the fire. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think these events are being misinterpreted or even sensationalized to fit this narrative?
It's possible. We do have to be mindful of how information gets filtered and amplified, particularly online. What's important is to separate speculation from facts. Speaking of facts, have you noticed how quiet the government has been about all of this?
Well, actually, the government has spoken out about the drone sightings. John Kirby, the National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications at the White House, stated that these objects appear to be manned aircraft operating lawfully.
Oh, okay.
So that suggests there's a more mundane explanation behind all of this. maybe related to civilian or commercial drone activity.
That's interesting. So maybe not a grand conspiracy after all? It seems like a classic case of jumping to conclusions before all the facts are in, which is often what happens with conspiracy theories, wouldn't you say? Before we dive deeper into that, what do you think? Are you buying into Project Bluebeam, or are you leaning towards a more rational explanation? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And while you're at it, hit that like button and share this deep dive with your friends. Who doesn't love a good conspiracy theory?
Right. Even if they're not true, they're definitely entertaining. But it is important to have that critical thinking cap on.
Yeah.
Especially when we're bombarded with information from all sides.
Absolutely. We have to be mindful of our own biases and how they might influence our interpretations.
Speaking of government investigations and critical thinking, I think it's worth bringing up Project Blue Book.
Oh, yeah.
A real-life Air Force project that investigated UFO sightings from 1947 to 1969. Have you heard of that?
Yes, Project Blue Book is a fascinating case study. It's a great example of the government trying to address public concerns about unexplained aerial phenomena, long before drones were even a thing.
Right. And just like with these recent drone sightings, there was a lot of public fascination and speculation surrounding those UFO reports back then. Before we dive into the details of Project Blue Book, let's take a moment to hear from you. What's your gut feeling on all of this? Do you think there's something more to these drone sightings, or are we getting worked up over nothing? Share your other opinions with us in the comments below.
We'd love to hear your perspectives. And if you're enjoying this conversation, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Other Opinion channel for more thought-provoking deep dives.
Yes.
We'll be right back. It's a really great point you bring up about those historical parallels. It seems like we're hardwired to crave explanations, especially when it comes to things we don't understand. So back to Project Blue Book. This was a systematic effort to collect and analyze data about UFO sightings, trying to figure out what was real and what was just misidentification or, people's imaginations running wild.
Makes sense. So
Yeah.
what did they find? Was there anything that couldn't be explained away? Were there really aliens buzzing around back in the 50s?
Well, they investigated over 12,000 UFO reports and found that the vast majority could be explained as things like weather balloons, airplanes, even bright stars or planets. It turns out people misinterpret what they see more often than you'd think, especially when they're already primed to see something extraordinary.
I guess that makes sense. If you're expecting to see a UFO, every light in the sky suddenly looks suspicious. But what about the cases that couldn't be explained? Did Project Blue Book uncover any evidence of extraterrestrial activity?
While they couldn't explain every single case, they didn't find anything that definitively pointed to aliens or some kind of advanced technology we didn't know about. Out of over 12,000 cases, around 700 remained unidentified. But even for those, the Air Force concluded that none of them posed a threat to national security.
So no proof of aliens, but also no imminent threat. That's kind of reassuring, I guess. But it's interesting that even with a dedicated government investigation, some mysteries remain. It makes you wonder if we'll ever truly know the answers to some of these questions.
The unknown can be unsettling, for sure. It often leads us to fill in the blanks ourselves, which can sometimes lead down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories.
Exactly. And speaking of those rabbit holes, Project Bluebeam isn't the only theory out there about powerful forces controlling the world. Conspiracy theories have been around forever, and it seems like they're more prevalent than ever these days. Why do you think that is?
It's a complex issue with a few factors at play. One is the sheer volume of information we're exposed to now. With the internet and social media, it's easy to find information that confirms our existing beliefs. Even if those beliefs aren't based on facts, this can create echo chambers where misinformation thrives.
That's so true. You go down these online rabbit holes and suddenly you're convinced that the Earth is flat or that birds aren't real. It's wild. But seriously, it's important to be aware of those echo chambers and to make sure we're getting information from credible sources. What do you think?
Absolutely. And it's not just about the sources of information, it's also about our own psychology. People are naturally drawn to patterns and explanations. When we see something we don't understand, our brains try to make sense of it.
It's like we're hardwired to connect the dots, even if those dots aren't really there.
Exactly. And that's where conspiracy theories come in. They offer a neat and tidy explanation for complex events. Even if that explanation is based on flawed logic or misinformation, it's about feeling like you're in the know, like you've got this secret knowledge that most people don't.
And that feeling of being in the know can be really powerful. It can make people feel smart, special, even superior to others. It's like they've cracked the code, even if that code is completely made up.
It's a way of making sense of a world that can feel chaotic and unpredictable. Conspiracy theories offer a sense of order and control, even if it's a false sense of control. And for some people, that can be very comforting.
It's like if you believe in a conspiracy theory, you feel like you at least understand the forces at play, even if those forces are sinister or malevolent.
Right, and that's what makes them so compelling, but also potentially dangerous.
I agree. It's one thing to entertain these theories as thought experiments, but it's another thing altogether to let them dictate your worldview or your actions. And unfortunately, we've seen real-world consequences of conspiracy theories, like people refusing to vaccinate their kids or storming the Capitol.
It's important to recognize that conspiracy theories exist on a spectrum. Some are harmless and entertaining, while others can be incredibly destructive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy to tell which is which. So how can people develop that critical thinking muscle? How can they avoid falling prey to misinformation and harmful conspiracy theories?
I think the first step is to be aware of your own biases. We all have them, and they can influence how we interpret information. It's also crucial to evaluate sources. Consider different perspectives and ask yourself, what evidence supports this claim? Is there a more plausible explanation that doesn't involve a grand conspiracy? And how might my own emotions or beliefs be influencing my judgment?
Those are great questions to ask. And while we're on the topic of critical thinking, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever fallen for a conspiracy theory? How do you avoid getting swept up in misinformation, especially online?
Share your other opinions with us in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the Other Opinion channel for more discussions like this. The more we can encourage critical thinking and healthy skepticism, the better equipped we'll be to navigate the complexities of our world.
Speaking of navigating complexities, what about all this talk of government cover-ups and a lack of transparency? Do you think the government has a responsibility to be more open about these unexplained phenomena?
That's a tricky question. On the one hand, there's the argument for transparency that the public has a right to know what the government is doing, especially when it comes to issues that could potentially affect our safety or security. On the other hand, there are legitimate concerns about national security and the potential for misinformation to spread if sensitive information is released prematurely.
It's a delicate balance, for sure, and it's one that governments have been grappling with for decades, especially when it comes to UFOs and other unexplained phenomena. But getting back to the psychology of conspiracy theories, what are some of the red flags that people should be aware of? Like, how can you tell if you're reading something that's based on speculation rather than evidence?
One common red flag is the overuse of vague or unsubstantiated claims. For example, if someone is constantly talking about shadowy elites or hidden agendas without providing any concrete evidence, that's a sign to be skeptical.
Right. It's like they're trying to create an air of mystery and intrigue without actually saying anything of substance.
Another red flag is the tendency to dismiss all official explanations or evidence as part of the conspiracy.
It's like they're saying, if you don't agree with me, you're just part of the cover-up.
Mm.
It creates this us versus them mentality that can be really toxic.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to engage in these conversations with a spirit of curiosity and open-mindedness. We may not always agree, but we can at least try to understand each other's perspectives.
Well said.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great place to pause for a moment and get your input.
What are some other red flags you've noticed when it comes to conspiracy theories? Have you ever found yourself questioning an official explanation or wondering if there's more to the story?
We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop your other opinions in the comments below, and let's continue this conversation. And don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to The Other Opinion for more insightful deep dives. We'll be back in a moment to explore even more about the psychology behind these compelling narratives.
It's so fascinating how these theories can, tap into our deepest fears and desires.
Yeah.
Like they're offering a sense of order,
Right.
in a world that can often feel so chaotic and unpredictable.
Absolutely. When we feel like we lack control, conspiracy theories can provide that sense of agency. It's like saying, even though things are bad, at least I understand why.
Yeah, it's almost like a coping mechanism, right?
Yeah.
But as we've discussed, comfort can come at a cost. Belief in these theories can lead people down some pretty dangerous paths.
Yeah. Like distorting their perceptions of reality, impacting their relationships with others.
Exactly. It's crucial to recognize when a theory crosses the line from harmless speculation into harmful misinformation.
So how do we strike that balance? How do we engage with these ideas critically without getting sucked into this vortex of unfounded beliefs? What advice would you give to someone who might be struggling to discern fact from fiction, especially in this online world where misinformation spreads like wildfire?
Well, I think developing strong critical thinking skills is essential. Question everything. Look for evidence-based arguments, not just passionate opinions. Check sources. Are they reputable? Are they biased?
Like being a detective.
Right.
You have to gather evidence and follow the facts wherever they lead.
Exactly.
Even if they challenge your preconceived notions.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to change your mind when presented with new information. A willingness to adapt and evolve your understanding is a sign of a healthy, critical mind.
That's a great point. And it's a good reminder that learning is a lifelong process. We should never stop questioning, exploring, and challenging our own beliefs.
Absolutely. And it's okay to disagree. Respectful dialogue is key, even when discussing contentious topics. We can learn from each other, even if we don't always see eye to eye.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we're all in this together, trying to make sense of a complex world.
Yeah, we are. And sometimes the most important thing is not finding all the answers, but asking the right questions.
So true. And sometimes the most outlandish theories can spark the most interesting conversations.
Yeah.
Prompting us to think critically and examine our own beliefs.
They certainly can. And who knows, maybe in that process of questioning and exploring, we'll discover something new about ourselves and the world around us.
I think that's a great note to end on. Before we wrap up, though, I want to remind everyone to leave your other opinions down in the comments below. Tell us what you think about Project Bluebeam conspiracy theories in general, or even just your thoughts on the nature of truth and belief in today's world.
We'd love to hear your perspectives. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Other Opinion channel for more thought-provoking conversations just like this one. Share it with your friends, family, neighbors, even that strange guy who always wears a tinfoil hat.
We appreciate you joining us on this wild ride through the world of conspiracy theories. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep those minds engaged.
And remember, this was an AI-powered podcast, and some information might be wrong.